on back, Charlie.
We need to go this
It will be a one-stop tour on our way out to the Apollo Saturn V Center. It's on the way going to the moon. On the way, we're going to watch videos NASA prepared for you to see. I'll be telling you about things we have going on out here right now. And I'm also going to be pointing things out to you once we get out close to the buildings and the launch pads. We have two launch pads out here, Launch Pad A and Launch Pad B. We started launching from them in 1968 with the Apollo program and then the Space Shuttle program. So we're going to do a loop around both of the launch pads and get a good look at them. And we're also going to see the three active launch pads that's located over at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. That's where the Air Force launches all the unmanned rockets from. So I'm going to point those out to you also while we are passing them. And this is also a wildlife refuge. There's 140,000 acres out here. NASA uses less than 10% of that for their operations. So the most abundant wildlife we have is probably the alligator. There's between 5,000 and 6,000 of them out here. So chances are you might see one today. So just keep an eye out in the waters and up on the banks. I'm going to point one out to you if I see one. And we'll be leaving here in just another minute or as soon as the bus in front of us moves. Please do not talk on your cell phone on the bus. You may take pictures, but please remain seated at all times. On behalf of NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, welcome aboard.
A rich history. Promising future. A workforce with legendary talent. At the nation's most celebrated launch complex for over half a century. This is NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6.
Look for alligators.
We've been in this business for over 50 years. Every mission, every innovation, every new partnership is powered by decades of experience and unwavering commitment to excellence. Today we stand on the foundation of that legacy, as together we build our future in space.
NASA right now, they're focusing on deep space exploration. We have a new rocket. It's called the Space Launch System rocket. The first test launch of that rocket is going to be in 2017, and it's going to be unmanned. The capsule that's going to go on top of the rocket is called the Orion capsule. And later this year, we're going to have some of the first testing on that capsule from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. And then 2021 is when they plan on taking the Orion capsule, putting it on top of the Space Launch System rocket, and launching it up into space with up to 4 American astronauts on board. We're also working with commercial companies out here right now, and they're taking over low Earth orbit. There's 3 main companies that are competing with each other to win a contract with NASA. to be able to take the astronauts back and forth to the International Space Station. Those three companies are Boeing, Sierra Nevada, and SpaceX. Boeing's working out here inside of a building called the Orbiter Processing Facility on their vehicle. It's called a CST-100. And SpaceX already launches from over at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. They already have a contract with NASA and they deliver supplies to the International Space Station and they bring back experiments and they've been doing that very successfully. They have a Falcon 9 rocket, they put a Dragon capsule on top of it and they're working hard to get their vehicles man-rated for the astronauts. So this is all part of our commercial crew program. It teams NASA and the commercial space industry together to develop new space transportation systems to the International Space Station and future low Earth orbit missions. And we're going to watch a quick video that's going to tell you some more about all that.
The send-off of countless robotic explorers.
Here's the building up here.
Kennedy Space Center knows adventure on a grand scale. As the home base of NASA's Launch Services Program, we prepare and launch a variety of rockets, carrying spacecraft headed for destinations in low Earth orbit, across our solar system, and into the farthest reaches of deep space. NASA's Commercial Crew Program is taking America to new heights, with its aerospace industry partners and a revolutionary approach to human spaceflight, with the ultimate goal of developing launch systems to provide safe, reliable, and affordable astronaut access to space. NASA is working with industry to deliver cargo to the International Space Station under contracts with commercial companies. And KSC is preparing for NASA's next generation heavy lift rocket, the Space Launch System, capable of launching the Orion multi-purpose crew vehicle and additional cargo deeper into space than astronauts have ever been before.
Every day that we design Orion, we get closer to going up to Mars, like the moon, Mars, asteroids, or perhaps even the moons of other planets.
Okay, they're also doing a lot of work out here right now in a lot of the areas and a lot of the facilities to get ready for the new programs. For example, we have a mobile launcher they started working on back in 2010. That mobile launcher is going to support the stacking, testing, servicing, and launch of America's next spacecraft, the new Space Launch System rockets. We're going to pass by that in a little bit, and I want to point it out to you. They're also doing a lot of work inside the Vehicle Assembly Building, the VAB. That's the big building up here in front of us. They're doing a lot of work in there to get it ready for NASA and the commercial space industry to work together in there, side by side on their spacecrafts. That building measures 525 feet tall, and it features 70 lifting devices inside. We're going to be watching a video that's going to talk some more about all the work that they're doing out here right now. And then in a couple of minutes, we'll be driving in front of the Vehicle Assembly Building, so you're going to get a good look at it. We're going to talk some more about it while we're driving in front of it.
It'd be a good picture of the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Kennedy Space Center is undergoing extensive changes as we prepare for the future. With such a diverse array of vehicles seeking launch support and processing capabilities, we're modernizing and streamlining our facilities to serve a variety of rockets and spacecraft, both government and commercial. That ambitious job falls to the Center's Ground Systems Development and Operations Program, and work is already well underway on Launch Complex 39B, the new 355-foot tall mobile launcher, a refurbished crawler transporter, and inside the Center's iconic Vehicle Assembly Building. the future unfolds, collaboration will be the key to maintaining our success. The Center Planning and Development Office is hard at work developing partnerships that will share the center's unique resources while advancing its goal as a robust, multi-user spaceport. Facilities previously dedicated to the space shuttle are now being used by commercial companies. For example, Orbiter Processing Facility number 3 will be used by the Boeing Company for the manufacture and assembly of its CST-100 spacecraft. And the new Exploration Park, including the Space Life Sciences Lab, will serve as a hub for cutting-edge research and technology, most of which will be tested in space 250 miles above Earth, aboard the International Space Station.
Okay, we're getting closer to the vehicle assembly building. If you look on the side of the building, there's those big gray doors on the side that go all the way up to the top. Behind those gray doors are high bays. There's 2 high bays on the west side. This is the west side. And then there's 2 more high bays on the east side. Then there's a transfer aisle that runs north and south down the middle. We're going to be passing by the front side of the building, and it is the south side. They have 4 high bays in the building because when they built the building, they were planning on stacking 4 rockets at a time, but that never really happened. So the west side is usually used for storage, and they usually stack and assemble all the vehicles over on the east side because it's closer to the launch pads. Okay, so when we get up here in front of the building, I want you to look at the American flag that's painted on the front of the building. Get right around this building, you'll be able to see it over here to the left. Okay, each of the stars on that flag measures 6 feet wide from point to point. Each of the stripes measure 9 feet wide. The blue part on the flag where the stars are is as big as an NBA-sized basketball court, and that is also the tallest 1-story building in the world. If you're sitting on the other side of the bus, we're going to come back by this building again in a little bit, and it'll be on your side so you'll get a better look at it. But inside this building is where all the Saturn V rockets were stacked, all of the space shuttles were assembled, and where all of the new Space Launch System rockets will be stacked. We're coming up on the east side of the building, so you see the big gray doors up here coming up on the east side. Now we have 2 crawler transporters. These are like really big tractors, and that's what they use to transport the vehicles. Back in the space shuttle days, a crawler transporter would pick up a mobile launch platform, take it inside the VAB. Then they would assemble the space shuttle on top of the platform. Then the gray doors you see over here to the left open about half the way up. The crawler would come out the doors with a mobile launch platform and the space shuttle on top of it, and follow the gravel runway you see up here to the left all the way down to one of the launch pads. This is 3.5 miles from launch pad A, 4.2 miles away from launch pad B. The crawler would use both lanes and straddle the grassy median. Now on the top of that road is Tennessee-Alabama River Rock. Underneath that is various levels of fill and lime rock. The road was built in the 1960s, and it can withstand up to 26 million pounds of weight. But if the crawler was coming down this road right now, it'd be moving very slowly. Its top speed unloaded is 2 miles per hour. Its top speed loaded is only 1 mile per hour. So if the crawler was coming down this road fully loaded, that's with a mobile launch platform and a space shuttle on top of it, it would take about 6 to 7 hours to get out to the launch pad, depending on which launch pad they were going to. Okay, up ahead here in the distance and out to the left, you can see it sticking up over the trees. Up there, that's Launch Pad A. Launch Pad A is the most famous of all of our launch pads because that is where all the men who walked on the moon lifted off from. There were 6 landings on the moon. 12 men walked on the moon, 2 per landing, and they all lifted off from Launch Pad A. That's also where we had our first and last space shuttle launch go up from. There was a total of 135 space shuttle launches. But we're going to be getting a lot closer to Launch Pad A, so we're going to be talking a lot more about it when we're out there closer to it. Back to the crawlers. When the crawlers were taking the space shuttles out to the launch pad, they had to take them out and leave them on the pad about 30 days before the launch so they could start testing on the vehicle. So whenever there was a space shuttle on the launch pad, they always wanted to keep a crawler close by. So they always kept a crawler parked in the fenced-off area that's going to be up ahead here to the left. Couple reasons why they kept the crawler so close. One, it takes a long time to get back and forth. Number two, the crawler only gets 32 feet to the gallon. So it was a little bit cheaper to keep the crawler close by. So when we go around this corner over here to the left, there's a crawler transporter parked here in the fenced off area right now, and there's a mobile launch platform setting on top of it. So on the bottom there's the crawler transporter. We have two of those. The other one's inside the vehicle assembly building. They were used during the Apollo program, the Space Shuttle program, and right now they're being remodeled for the new Space Launch System rocket. Setting on top of that is a mobile launch platform. We have three of those. That's what the Space Shuttle's launched off of. It's also what the Saturn V rockets launched off of. They just remodeled them for the Space Shuttle program. So over here to the left, you get a good look at it. We'll also be coming back by this again, setting on the other side of the bus. Okay, up ahead here to the right, this is called the observation gantry. This used to be the first stop on the bus tour. We don't stop here now because NASA's letting us get closer to the launch pads. So we don't have to stop here, but nobody would be here for a launch. It's way too close. The reason why, they would probably go deaf, so they just don't let anybody come here. The only people that were out here were the astronauts that were inside the space shuttle. And there was also an emergency personnel team parked right up here to the right in an armored personnel carrier. That's an armored vehicle. Other than that, everybody was 3.5 miles back at the VAB. So 3.5 miles is the closest anyone could get to a launch. I'm up ahead here to the left. On the top of Launch Pad A, there's a tall white thing. That's the lightning mast. They learned during the Apollo days that Florida is the lightning capital of the United States, so they added the lightning mast to protect the space shuttles. The lightning mast is about 80 feet tall. That's about the same size as one of the first rockets we sent into space, the Mercury Redstone rocket that Alan Shepard flew on. We're going to be going around the corner up here. When we go around this corner up here, you're going to notice that the crawler has about a 5% grade that it has to climb to get the vehicles up on top of the launch pad. And the crawlers actually have hydraulics on them that's able to keep the vehicles completely level at all times. While they are climbing up this grade, you're going to see up here to the left. So over here to the left, you get a good look at Launch Pad A. You can see they're doing some construction up there right now. We'll talk some more about that in a little bit.
Mommy, I'll get that
A couple reasons why they have to build the launch pad up like that is because they need a flame trench underneath. They need somewhere for the flames to go. This is Florida. You can't dig down in Florida. You will hit water because we are surrounded by a swamp. So everything in Florida has to be built up. So that is why they have the launch pads built up like that. Down from the lightning mast, the area is called the fixed service structure. To the left of the fixed service structure, the area you see sticking out with all the white on it, that's called the rotating service structure. That white area is where they would bring the payload out to. They would insert it inside the white area. Then the rotating service structure wrapped around the space shuttle, and that's how they inserted the payload into the space shuttle's orbiter. Now, if the space shuttle was out here right now, you would not be able to see it because that rotating service structure would be completely covering it up to protect it. But about 24 hours before the launch, they would open up the structure and the space shuttle would be exposed. The night before the launch, the astronauts came out here. They would be right up ahead here to the left on the other side of the fence. and their families will be over here to the right in the grass. And they waved at each other from across the road, and that's how they say their final goodbyes. They can't get closer than that because the astronauts were in quarantine to protect them from getting sick. They don't want to get sick and miss their flight after all those years of training, so they say goodbye from across the road, and that's to protect them. As we go around the corner, if you look over to your right, across from the water, that's Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. The first 4 lightning towers is where Atlas V rockets launch from. The next 4 lightning towers is where SpaceX launches the Falcon 9 rocket from. And then the white building back behind that is where the Delta IV rockets launch from. Now they have a lot of launch pads over at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, but that's the only 3 active launch pads, and that's the only 3 rockets that launch from over there, and it's all unmanned missions. The last time an astronaut launched from over there was back in the 60s, but that's going to change. In the next couple of years, that's where the astronauts will be launching from to get back and forth to the International Space Station. If Boeing or Sierra Nevada win the contract, they'll launch their vehicle off of the Atlas V rocket. But if SpaceX wins the contract, they're going to use their own Falcon 9 rocket with their new Dragon 2 capsule. So we just have to wait and see who wins the contract, but that's going to be happening in the next couple of years. Now we can't turn to the right because that would take us to Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, and they're a little bit picky about who they let on their property. That also would take us to the astronauts' beach house, but they pretty much only allow astronauts to go there, so we can't go there either. In front of us is the ocean, so we're going to be driving alongside the ocean here for a couple of minutes. It's called Canaveral National Seashore. It's part of the Wildlife Refuge, so it's a private protected beach. It's the opening right out here to the right. You can see it a little bit out there. Okay, over here to the left, about halfway down that fixed service structure, there used to be an arm. On the end of the arm was a white box. It's called the clean room. That was where the astronauts took the last steps on Earth before they stepped into their vehicle. They recently took the arm down. The reason why Launchpad A has been leased out to another company. I'm going to tell you why and to who in a little bit. But other than that arm being missing, this launch pad looks exactly like it did for the last space shuttle launch, which was Atlantis back in 2011. Now, I'm going to pause right up here for a couple seconds. If you want to stand up, take a picture out the window of Launchpad A, you can. It's a very good view from here, and it's not going to look like this for too much longer. Okay, that water tower holds 300,000 gallons of water. There's another 100,000 gallons of water inside the piping. All the water was used before the launch. About 16 seconds before the launch, they flooded the launch pad with all the water. That was used for sound suppression. That keeps the sound decibels down, and it keeps the sound from bouncing up and damaging the space shuttle. So if you've ever seen a launch on TV and you saw the white smoke on the ground, it wasn't smoke, it's steam from all the water. So all the water is used for is sound suppression. Once the engines were lit, the space shuttle cleared the tower in less than 8 seconds. It's gone over 100 miles an hour by the time it cleared the tower, and all of the flames went right along behind it, so it did little to no damage to the launch pad or to the area because it moved so quickly. The space shuttle went up, it came up over kind of where we are right now, went out over the ocean. The 2 white solid rocket boosters fell off somewhere around Jacksonville in the ocean. We would retrieve those, bring them back here, refurbish them, and reuse them. The big Arctic-style fuel tank that's not reusable, it disintegrated when it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. You could come back out here right after a launch and everything would look exactly like it does right now. You wouldn't be able to tell anything had happened. Before the launch, they would set off fireworks and things like that to scare off the animals. And for example, if it was a day launch, you'd be back out here doing tours within 2 hours after the launch. You'd already see that the wildlife was back, so everything went right back to normal after a launch. Okay, now we're off to Launchpad B. Launchpad B looks a lot different than Launchpad A, but back in the Space Shuttle days, they were identical launch pads. They rotated launches in between them. But they started redoing Launchpad B a couple years back to get it ready for the future. It's gone back to a clean pad. It looks like it did during the Apollo days, except for the 3 lightning towers. Those are an addition. They're 600 feet tall. It's universal launch pad. That means anything can launch from there. So any company can bring their rocket out here and launch it. NASA hasn't said when they're going to allow them to start doing that, but that's the whole reason why they went back to the clean pad, is that they're going to be, this is becoming a multi-user spaceport, so they're going to be leasing this launch pad out in between their launches. They have also updated this launch pad with state-of-the-art fiber optics, so they can have multiple launches from here in the same day. They can have multiple commercial launches in the same day, or they can have a NASA rocket launch with a commercial launch. That is a possibility. We never had a possibility for anything like that before, because in the past our computers could never turn around quick enough. But there's a lot of new possibilities for the future out here with all the new technology NASA's given us. We actually have more memory and more power in our smartphones today than they did in the computers when they landed on the moon. So a lot of new possibilities for the future and a lot of new possibilities for the research we can do on the moon when we go back to the moon. So over here to the right is Launch Pad B. The first launch from here is going to be in 2017. That's the first test launch of the Space Launch System rocket. After that, they're probably going to land on the moon, then probably an asteroid, but eventually the main goal is to land on Mars. A lot of things that we have down here on Earth that make life easier for us, especially a lot of things in the medical field, maybe even something that saved your life is because of a spinoff from a NASA program. So you can go to nasa.gov to look up all those spinoffs. Most of the things on the list you probably never even realized came from NASA. So that's the benefits of space exploration for us down here on Earth. Okay, even though this building over here to the left looks pretty safe, nobody would be in here for a launch. It's way too close. These cars would not be out here either because the sound would blow out their windows. The blast zone for a launch was 3.5 miles, and that was in case of an accident. But it was also because of the sound. If you were this close to a launch, the concussion from the sound would stop your heart. It was very loud, so the sound was always a major thing that they had to protect from. Look like we have many alligators out right now. Okay, so over here to the right, you get a good look at Launch Pad B from here. Now, I told you earlier Launch Pad A is going to be leased out to another company. The reason why, NASA doesn't even have the budget to maintain Launch Pad A, plus they would not be using it anyway. They're only focusing on one launch pad for the future, Launch Pad B. So they recently awarded Launch Pad A to SpaceX for the next 20 years, and we'll talk some more about that in a second. First, over here to the left, these are flame deflectors. They were taken out of the flame trench. When the engines were lit, that's why we get the direct hit from the flames. Those actually funneled the flames down into the flame trench. Okay, so SpaceX is taking over Launch Pad A. They're going to be doing pretty much the same things from Launch Pad A that they're already doing from over at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, except that they're going to be using a bigger rocket. It's a big heavy lift rocket that they're going to launch from Launch Pad A. The guy that owns SpaceX is the founder of PayPal. He founded that when he was in college. He sold it, started his own rocket company, and he's been very successful in his rocket company. He's a very smart guy. But one of his goals in life is he wants to live on Mars, and he wants to die on Mars, but not from impact. So one of the things he's going to do from Launch Pad A is try to get to Mars as quickly and safely as he can. And he's actually young enough, or he will probably have enough time to do that in his lifetime. But him and NASA is going to be learning from each other on their journey to Mars. He wants to have his first test launch from Pad A next year. So we'll just have to wait and see if that happens. But it's going to be really interesting when he starts launching the new rocket from Launch Pad A. We're going to watch a video. It's going to tell you all about the crawler transporters. We're going to be passing back by the crawler and the vehicle assembly building on our way out to the Saturn V Center.
Of the space race, the Saturn V was NASA engineers' answer to manned spaceflight. Part of that mission
was getting the vehicles from the Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, to the launch pad 3.5 miles away. NASA considered several methods for movement: a rail line, a canal and barge, and 2 crawler transporters. Assembly began in 1965 here at KSC. The crawlers have gone through several modifications throughout the years. When they were built, the KSC crawlers were the largest tracked vehicles ever made, weighing 6 million pounds, 131 feet wide, and 114 feet long. It's comprised of 4 trucks and 8 tracks. Each of those tracks have 57 cleats, each weighing a ton. The crawler is capable of carrying 9 million pounds of mobile launch platform, plus another 3 million pounds of assembled space vehicle. They move the mobile launcher platform into the Vehicle Assembly Building and then to the launch pad with an assembled space vehicle. Maximum speed is 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers per hour, loaded. About 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers per hour, unloaded. Launch pad to VAB trip time with the mobile launch platform is about 5 hours. When operated, it takes about 18 to 20 technicians and 7 engineers to move it along the crawler way. So many trips, the crawler has racked up more than 3,400 miles. The crawler transporters are powered by 16 traction motors, powered by 4 1,000 kilowatt generators, driven by 2 2,750 horsepower diesel engines. 2 750 kilowatt generators, driven by 2 1,065 horsepower diesel engines, are used for jacking, steering, lighting, and ventilating, and it's an average gas mileage of 32 feet per gallon. In the future, the crawler transporters will be used for the eventual NASA Space Launch Systems SLS heavy lift vehicles, as well as various commercial launch systems.
Okay, up here in front of us on the side of the VAB, those big gray doors, they open all the way up into each other, kind of like a deck of cards. It takes about 45 minutes for them to open all the way. All of the doors had to be open to get a Saturn V rocket out. It only cleared the top by 6 feet. But to get one of the shuttles out, you only had to open the doors half the way up. Now for the new Space Launch System rocket, they're going to open all the doors again, and those are also the largest opening doors in the world. Up ahead here to the right, there's a tall gray tower with blinking lights. That's the new mobile launcher. That's what the crawler is going to be taken out to Launch Pad B. The new rocket's going to be attached to the side of that tower, and that is what the new Space Launch System rocket is going to be launching off of. If you look at the picture on your TV, that's what it's supposed to look like in the future when the new rocket launches off of that tower out at Launch Pad B. To the left of the Vehicle Assembly Building, there's a little white building with windows along the front of it. That's the Launch Control Center. That's where the firing rooms are. So that's where the people were that were launching the vehicles. But they only have control in that building for the first 8 seconds. That's when Johnson's Control Center in Houston, Texas takes over. So for example, we were launching the space shuttles. We would not gain back control of the space shuttle's orbiter here until the orbiter's wheels hit the ground and the astronauts stepped off. So we are only in charge of getting the vehicles ready here and launching the vehicles. Over in Houston, Texas, that's Mission Control. They are in charge of the actual mission. Okay, if you look over here to the left, across from the water, down from that flagpole is a little blue box. That's the countdown clock. If the only launches you've seen were on TV, that was probably the clock you've seen counting down because that's the press site. So that's the closest anyone could get to a launch. Up here to the right, passing by the Launch Control Building, that's also the most secure building we have on property. Everything out here is ran out of that building. Passing by the front side of the Vehicle Assembly Building, I told you earlier, it's the tallest one-story building in the world. If it did have stories, it would be about 52 stories tall, and it's hard to believe, but that building covers 8 acres. So there's a lot of volume in there. It's hard to believe it's that big until you're actually inside of it. It's a very big building. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot of people that work out here. These are all badged employees that you see out here. This is only one section. We have a much bigger section than this where headquarters is, where most of the office buildings are, and where they're building the new Orion capsule. So there's still a lot of people that work out here despite what you've heard. Okay, up here setting and the grass up here must be that just came out here today, so it's the first time I've seen it. But I think it's a mock-up of the new rocket and Orion capsule. So we'll see it in a minute when we get up there. So over here to the right, I think it's a mock-up of the new capsule and rocket.
Can you go in there?
And then right over here to the right, this is an armored personnel carrier. That's what the emergency personnel were inside of for the launch. There was also another one of those on the other side of the launch pad that was empty for the astronauts to get inside of in case of an emergency.
Well, this?
Okay, so it's just a transition period out here right now. It's the same thing that's always been done in the past. Whenever you retire a program, you always have to have a transition period because of the budget. The Space Shuttle was retired because it's only good for low Earth orbit. It was also a very old vehicle. So they decided a long time ago that they would retire the Space Shuttle as soon as it completed the International Space Station. And that is exactly what happened. So right now we're just waiting for our new rocket to get up and going. But we're just waiting for the new rocket to get up and going. But the only difference in this transition period and the ones in the past is that it's much busier out here right now. This is becoming a multi-user spaceport, so it's very busy out here. Up here to the right, these shorter square buildings with a gray stripe on the top of them, those are orbiter processing facilities. They were kind of like a specially made garage for the orbiters, so that's where the orbiters were stored and worked on. The orbiter is the white spacecraft part off of the space shuttle. Our new rocket's way too big to fit inside these buildings, so they're being leased out to some low Earth orbit companies. For example, Boeing's working inside of one of them on their CST-100, and also the Air Force is working inside of one of them on a new low Earth orbit vehicle that they are developing. Here to the right, the tall gray tower with the blinking lights, that's the new mobile launcher. So that's what the new rocket will be launching off of. They've still got a lot of work to do to that to finish getting it ready. There's also another mobile launch platform right up here to the right, just like the one that you saw on top of the crawler, but that's the original one. That's the one that Apollo 13 launched off of. Up here to the right, we're going to look in here and see if we have anything out, any wildlife out. Sometimes this is the area that they camp out at, the alligators and stuff. And sometimes they're very picky about their weather, so see if we have any out. Doesn't look like anything. Sorry. Looks like everything's hiding. Maybe some manatees under the water there. Don't see anything coming up. Okay, up here to the left on the other side of that white building is the runway. The runway is 15,000 feet long. That's how we would get the orbiters back. When the orbiters were coming back, they were gliders. They had no engine, so they only had one chance to get the landing right. That green little structure you see out there is called the mate-demate device. When it was bad weather here, they would probably have to land the orbiter out in California. They use their mate-to-mate device to pick up the orbiter, put it on the back of a 747, and fly it back here to us. We use our mate-to-mate device to take the orbiter off of the 747. They still use the runway a lot. There's a lot of airplanes that come in here. Commercial companies have just started to use the runway. NASCAR uses the runway to test their vehicles. The Air Force uses the runway. So they do some testing for Mars and the moon out there, so there's still a lot of activity on the runway. We are almost to the Apollo Saturn V Center, so inside this building is one of the 3 Saturn V rockets that was left over from the moon program. It's 363 feet long. Also inside there's an Apollo treasure gallery. In that treasure gallery there's a real spacesuit Alan Shepard wore on the Apollo 14 mission in 1971. That's the same mission that he played golf on the moon. And it still has moon dust on the ankles of the boots. And then also the command module that you splash back down into the ocean in is in there. So don't forget to go inside the treasure gallery. And then outside of the treasure gallery is a real piece of the moon that you can touch. There's also 2 theaters inside. One's going to be a recreation of the Apollo 11 lunar landing. That was the first steps on the moon. But I'm going to drop you off in front of some silver doors that open every 8 minutes. There's a tortoise over here to the left. Behind those doors is going to be the first theater. In that theater, you're going to feel what it felt like to be inside the firing room in 1968 when they were launching Apollo 8. They have the original consoles in there out of the firing room, so it's really cool. You don't want to miss it. Up here to the right, this is the VIP viewing area. It's by invitation only for NASA guests and astronaut guests. Once you get inside the building, you can go out back. There's more grandstands out there. That's where the astronauts' family watch the launch from. So you can go out there if you want and get a look at what their view is like of the launch. But when you get off the bus, just wait right out here in front of the silver doors until they open. When you're ready to leave here, you're going to exit through the gift shop. Just get on any bus and it will take you directly back to the beginning to the visitors complex. The ride back from here only takes about 15 minutes, so just stay here as long as you want. Catch any bus back whenever you're ready to go.
15 minutes d'arrêt. 15 minutes d'arrêt.